Cameron just flipped the whole game upside down. The shocking leak has left Chrissy scrambling for answers and Jim Jones walking away in silence. Fans are stunned. The streets are buzzing, and the fallout might be the most explosive yet. Let's break down what really went down. The streets of Harlem were buzzing, but not for the usual reasons. It wasn't about a new mixtape drop, a fashion statement, or even a rap beef spilling onto the block. This time, the whispers, the side-eyes, and the murmurs were all centered around Cameron, a man who had built his name not just on lyrical talent and style, but also on his fearless ability to say what others wouldn't. And when Cameron decided to put something out into the world, it was never just gossip, was explosive. This time, the leak he dropped wasn't just a casual jab at the industry. It was personal. It was brutal. And it shattered Chrissy Lampkin's world in a way that left Jim Jones unable to ignore the damage. What Cameron revealed sent shockwaves through the industry. The Harlem rapper, known for his icy delivery and legendary Diplomat's legacy, had always had a complicated relationship with Jim Jones. They had built an empire together. But they had also watched that empire crumble under egos, money disputes, and loyalty issues over the years as they tried to patch things up. But the scars never fully healed. So when Cameron dropped his shocking leak, it wasn't just some random act. It was calculated. It was like opening a wound that never closed. The leak wasn't just a diss track or some vague comment on Instagram Live. Cameron came forward with actual evidence, audio and video receipts that dragged Chrissy into the spotlight in the worst way possible. The footage reportedly showed Chrissy in compromising situations, moments that directly clashed with the image she had worked so hard to portray on Love and Hip Hop for years. Chrissy had been this strong nonsense woman standing beside Jim, fighting for their relationship, fighting for respect from his mother, Mama Jones, and fighting for her own independence. But what came in exposed told a different story, one where Chrissy wasn't the victim, but someone holding secrets of her own. The internet immediately exploded. Fans who had followed the saga of Jim and Chrissy for over a decade were stunned. Memes started flying within hours. Gossip blogs had a field day, and Instagram comment sections turned into full-blown battle zones. Team Chrissy versus Team Jim versus Team Kemet was chaos. Some people were sympathetic to Chrissy, saying Cameron had gone too far and violated bro code by putting personal business out for the world. Others argued that Chrissy had it coming, that she had played a dangerous game in the spotlight for too long. And now Cameron had finally caught up. But the person hit the hardest wasn't Chrissy. It was Jim Jones. For years, Jim had defended Chrissy against the world. He had stood by her when Mama Jones publicly disapproved of their relationship. He had tried to balance his loyalty to his Dipset brothers with his loyalty to his woman. He had sacrificed business opportunities and friendships to prove that Chrissy was his rock, his ride door. But now, faced with Cameron's leak, Jim was caught in the worst position of his life. Not only was his brother-in-arms exposing his woman, but the entire industry was watching to see how he'd respond. Would he defend Chrissy once again, even if the evidence looked bad? Or would he finally walk away from the relationship he had fought so hard to maintain? Behind the scenes, things were messy. Sources close to the couple revealed that Jim and Chrissy's home was full of tension. Chrissy reportedly broke down in tears, insisting that Cam's leak was out of context, exaggerated, or even fabricated. She begged Jim not to let Cameron's bitterness destroy what they had built. But Jim wasn't easily convinced this time. He had spent years being put in situations where his loyalty to Chrissy cost him other relationships. Now watching Cam weaponize their private life, Jim couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, his longtime partner had left him vulnerable to humiliation. Meanwhile, Cameron played it cool. On social media, he cracked jokes, dropped subliminals, and hinted that he had even more to expose if anyone tried to come at him sideways. That was always Cam's style. Never back down, Never. Show weakness and never let anyone control the narrative. Fans debated endlessly about why he dropped a leak in the first place. Was it revenge for old Dipset grudges? Was it because Jim and Cam had once again drifted apart after trying to reconcile? Or was it just Cam being Cam, thriving on chaos and controversy? But the impact was undeniable. Jim Jones couldn't even step outside without hearing whispers about Chrissy. Even at industry events, the energy shifted. People who once looked at him as Harlem royalty now gave him that look. The one that says, "Yo, is what Cam said true?" His pride was bruised, and Jim wasn't the kind of man to let disrespect slide, especially not in front of the whole world. The tension between Jim and Chrissy reached a boiling point when cameras weren't rolling. Arguments turned into long silences, and long silences turned into cold distance. Jim reportedly started spending more nights away from home, cleaning on old friends and questioning whether the woman he had invested nearly 2 decades of his life in was really worth all the chaos. And Chrissy, she felt betrayed not just by Cameron, but by Jim's hesitation. For years, she had fought to prove her loyalty. Now, with one leak, everything seemed undone. Fans who had grown up watching Love and hip-hop couldn't believe what they were seeing unfold. This wasn't just reality TV drama anymore. It was real life, raw and uncut. Chrissy had always wanted a fairy tale ending with Jim, marriage and all. But now that dream seemed more distant than ever because for the first time, Jim didn't just argue back, he walked away. At least that's what insiders claimed. After the leak, Jim reportedly left their home for several days, refusing to answer Chrissy's calls. The man who once defended her in front of his mother, his friends, and the entire hip-hop industry was now silent. And silence in moments like this was louder than any words. The leak had done more than embarrass the foundation of a relationship that had already been fragile. The bond between Jim and Cam was beyond repair, but now so was the bond between Jim and Chrissy. Harlem was watching, the industry was watching, and fans were left wondering, was this the final straw for Chrissy and Jim? Oh, or would they somehow patch things up again, just like they always had? One thing was clear. Cameron's shocking leak wasn't just another headline. It was a turning point. A moment where love, loyalty, and pride collided in the most public way possible. And as Jim Jones walked away, the world knew that this story was far from over. If Harlem thought the storm had peaked with Cameron's leak, they were wrong. Drama was only beginning. Part 1 of this saga was the leak itself, rude and impossible to ignore. But Part 2 was the aftermath, the reactions, the fallout that spread far beyond Jim, Chrissy, and Cam. This wasn't just about 3 people anymore. It became a spectacle, a headline that pulled in Mama Jones, industry peers, and millions of fans who had been emotionally invested in Jim and Chrissy's story for over a decade. The first ripple came from Mama Jones, anyone who had watched Love and hip-hop knew she had never been Chrissy's biggest supporter. From the very beginning, Mama Jones felt like Chrissy was controlling her son, manipulating him and driving a wedge between him and his family. Their clashes were legendary, and Mama Jones even recorded a diss track about Chrissy at one point. So when Cam dropped the leak, Mama Jones didn't hold back. On Instagram Live, Mama Jones went off. She didn't name Chrissy directly, but her words left no doubt who she was talking about. Some people have been wearing masks for years. You think? They love you. But really, they love what comes with you. The truth always comes to light. And baby, when it does, don't cry. Fans instantly flooded the comments with fire emojis, laughing faces, and Mama Jones' new comments. For Chrissy, it was a dagger to the chest. Not only was her private business exposed, but her biggest critic, her boyfriend's own mother, was now celebrating her downfall. Meanwhile, Jim Jones stayed uncharacteristically quiet in public. For years, Jim was known for defending Chrissy no matter what. But after the leak, his silence was deafening. Fans began speculating about his next move. Would he clap back at Cameron? Would he release a statement defending Chrissy like he always had? Or had Cam finally broken him to the point where he couldn't even muster the energy to protect his relationship anymore? Behind the scenes, insiders claimed Jim was torn. On one hand, he loved Chrissy deeply. She wasn't just a girlfriend. It was a partner he had built his life with. She had held him down when money was tight, when his career had ups and downs, and when everyone else seemed to walk away. But on the other hand, he couldn't ignore what Cam had shown the world. Whether it was exaggerated, manipulated, or 100% true, didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. Jim's reputation, his pride, his image as Harlem's capo was now tangled up in public humiliation. Public humiliation. Humiliation. And Cameron, he played the villain role like a pro. Every time blogs posted about the situation, Cam chimed in with cryptic captions, laughing emojis, or lines that seemed to poke at Jim's manhood. "Don't get mad at me. I ain't doing it. I just hit play," he wrote under one viral post. Fans ate it up, but others criticized Cam for crossing the line. Even people who weren't Team Chrissy admitted that some things shouldn't be aired out, especially when they could destroy families. The tension eventually spilled into industry circles. At a recent event in New York, Jim showed up looking visibly drained. Eyewitnesses claimed he wasn't his usual charismatic self. He kept to the side, avoided interviews, and barely cracked a smile. Normally, Jim thrived in the spotlight, but now he looked like a man weighed down by betrayal. Rumors even spread that when someone tried to bring up Kay's name, Jim walked away mid-conversation. For Chrissy, the humiliation cut even deeper. Blogs dissected every second of Cam's leak, turning her into the trending topic for all the wrong reasons. She couldn't escape the headlines. Chrissy was caught slipping. Cameron exposes Jin's Lady Harlem love story in flames. Even people who used to admire her strength and resilience on Love and Hip Hop were now questioning whether she had been playing a role all along at home. The arguments intensified. Chrissy accused Jim of abandoning her when she needed him. The most she felt, like he was letting Kron win, letting his ex-brow and arms dictate the narrative of their relationship. Jim, however, saw it differently to him. The fact that Cam even had something to leak meant Chrissy had left an opening. An opening that was now being used to humiliate him publicly. You don't understand what it feels like to walk outside and everybody looks at you like a fool, Jim allegedly snapped during one heated exchange. Those words cut deep because for years Chrissy had always insisted she was loyal. Now even Jim questioned it. The fallout even reached Love and Hip Hop producers. Word spread that VH1 was scrambling to figure out if this real-life scandal could become part of the storyline for the next season. Reality TV thrives on drama, and Cameron's leak was pure gold. But Jim wasn't interested. Sources close to him revealed he wanted nothing to do with cameras at that moment. Life wasn't a story. Line was a nightmare playing out in front of millions. A tot. Fans, however, couldn't stop speculating on Twitter and Instagram. Debates raged. Some blamed Cam, saying he was bitter about old Dipset grudges and took it out on Chrissy. Others blamed Chrissy, arguing that her past finally caught up with her. And a surprising number blamed Jim, saying he should have known better than to trust either Chrissy or Cam completely. The only thing everyone agreed on: this was the most dramatic chapter yet in the Jim and Chrissy saga. People had seen them fight, cry, break up, and make up on TV, but this time felt different. This time the pain wasn't just a storyline, it was real. And Jim's silence, his refusal to come to Chrissy's defense immediately, signaled to many that the relationship might finally be on its last legs. The streets began buzzing with rumors of Jim spending more time with old Dipset associates, leaning on people outside his relationship circle. Some even whispered that Jim was considering cutting ties with Chrissy completely, finally walking away after nearly 2 decades of ups and downs. He is tired. One insider claimed he sacrificed too much for too long. This leak was the last straw. But Chrissy wasn't going to let go that easily. Despite the humiliation, despite the tension, she still believed she and Jim could weather the storm. She had been with him through thick and thin, and she wasn't about to let Curran be the reason her relationship ended. "We've been through worse," she reportedly told a friend. But had they really been through worse? Or was this the kind of betrayal that no relationship could survive by the end of the week? One thing was clear. Jim's distance was growing. Chrissy's desperation was showing, and Kamain was enjoying every second of the chaos he had unleashed. Harlem was divided. The internet was divided. The industry was watching with popcorn in hand. The question that loomed over everything was simple, yet brutal. Would Jim Jones finally cut Chrissy off, or would he once again stand by her side in the face of humiliation? The answer wasn't clear yet. But one thing was certain. The saga was far from over. By the time the dust began to settle around Cameron's leak, one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same for Jim Jones and Chrissy Lampkin. The couple who had once been considered the ultimate example of hip-hop loyalty were now hanging by a thread. Their private battles splashed across every blog, podcast, and gossip platform. And the more silent Jim remained, the louder the noise around him grew. Behind closed doors, Jim was struggling with emotions he had spent years burying. For so long, he had made Chrissy's happiness a priority at the cost of his friendships, career moves, and sometimes even his pride. But Cameron's leak had forced him to face a harsh reality. Maybe loyalty alone wasn't enough. Maybe love, no matter how deep, couldn't survive when the world was constantly waiting for you to fail. Chrissy, on the other hand, refused to accept defeat. She knew the internet was brutal, and she knew Cam had scored a major win by dragging her name through the mud. But what hurt the most wasn't the leak, was Jim's silence. For years, she had watched him step up, defend her, and put everyone in their place. This time, however, she felt abandoned. Wasn't just fighting Cameron and Mama Jones or the media anymore. She was fighting the man she thought would always be by her side. The breaking point came one night when Jim returned home after being gone for days. Chrissy confronted him the moment he walked in, her voice trembling with both rage and heartbreak. "You think you can just walk away from me after everything we've been through?" she demanded. Jim, visibly exhausted, dropped his keys on the table and shook his head. "It ain't about walking away. It's about realizing what's real and what ain't." Those words pierced Chrissy deeper than Cam's entire leak. Years she had fought for Jim's commitment, even proposing to him on Love and Hip Hop. She believed that no matter the ups and downs, their love was unshakable. But now Jim was questioning the very foundation of their relationship. Rumors swirled that Jim was considering moving out permanently. And insiders claimed he had already been staying at a separate spot in Harlem, away from the chaos. For Chrissy, this felt like history repeating itself. Every time she thought marriage was finally on the horizon, something tore them apart. Mama Jones, business disputes, or now Cameron's leak. Only this time, the wound felt too deep to heal. Meanwhile, Cam kept fanning the flames. On Instagram Live, he joked about how quiet Jim had been, saying things like, "Funny how the loudest ones always go mute when the truth come out." He never mentioned Jim or Chrissy by name, but everyone knew who he was talking about. His fans cheered him on, calling him Killer Cam, the truth teller, while others criticized him for destroying a relationship just to settle old scores. Even Dipset fans were torn. Some felt Cam had betrayed the brotherhood by dragging Jim's personal life into the spotlight. Others argued that Jim had chosen Chrissy over the crew years ago, and this was simply Cameron coming back full circle. Regardless of opinions, one fact couldn't be denied. Cam had completely shifted the narrative. Okay, and Jim and Chrissy were left to pick up the pieces. For Chrissy, the humiliation was unbearable. Friends revealed she stopped going out, avoiding paparazzi and public events.